Hey, what's up, guys and gals? It's the Tyrant here, and welcome. Hey, what's up, guys and gals? It's the Tyrant here. Happy Monday to you. So, as you can tell by the title, today I want to do something a little bit different. And the title may be a little bit off compared to what I actually really want to do here, but basically we're going to look at Star Trek and Star Wars and Halo and make some comparisons. Now, this isn't so much comparisons in terms of their storylines or their overall universes or their mythology, but mostly the franchises themselves. And one of the things that I wanted to do today was take the concepts of both Star Wars and Star Trek and see if this is something that we could apply to Halo and quite possibly use to maybe further improve Halo down the road, since it does seem to be going through a little bit of a slump right now. I'm warning you right off the bat, this video is completely off the cuff. Usually when I do my Monday videos, particularly my Monday videos, there's not necessarily a script to them, but I have at least footnotes I can follow so I can better organize my thoughts. I didn't have a lot of time for this. Again, if you're watching this, it's on Monday. I am pre-recording this the Friday before because this week I am on vacation, so I'm out of town. But in the recording of this video, I just saw the new trailer for Star Wars The Last Jedi, and on top of that, this is the 40th anniversary for Star Wars. It came out in 1977, and it seems like a really good time to talk about this because I've never really discussed other sci-fi genres or other sci-fi universes on this channel other than Halo. What I kind of like about that is it gives me a chance to give you my perspectives on science fiction in general, what sort of got me into it, and how Halo plays a role in it. Star Wars was introduced to me as a very young child. I was probably about 8 years old at the time. First time I ever saw a space type movie. And it just completely blew my little childhood mind. I mean, I was obsessed with it throughout my early childhood. And when they re-released them in the theaters back in the 90s, I got to see those. It was just amazing to me to see this kind of thing. I had never seen anything like it before. Later on, I heard about Star Trek because I got introduced to that later. And it's interesting when people try to compare Star Wars and Star Trek because you can't. Both are sci-fi space operas, but that's about it. Star Wars is more action-based. Star Trek is more about politics. And it's kind of interesting to see the perspectives. Yes, they do both cross over into each other's, realms to a point. Star Wars will sometimes have philosophical discussions. Star Trek does have some pretty cool action sequences that happen occasionally, but they are two completely different things. One of the main things that they have in common, though, is they're both genres or series, I guess maybe that's the best way to frame it, that they came out decades and decades ago, and they're still around today. You still have fans of the original content. We've seen that content being made again and again and again. We've seen reboots for Star Trek. We haven't for Star Wars. Some argue that Episode 7 was kind of a reimagining of Episode 1. I disagree with that. I can see where they draw comparisons to it, but I don't look at it as a reimagining. And it's cool to see that the fact that a series that's as old as that is still so popular. When Star Wars came out, it was a hit. Action figures, sold like crazy. And 25 or 20 some odd years later, it was still so popular that they said, hey, let's make a new trilogy. That didn't go over so well. It probably might be somewhat fair to say that you could compare the Star Wars prequels with 343 taking over Halo. There are people out there who, they say, the new Halo games are fine and they enjoy them. And there are others out there that say, no, they're broken. It's nothing like what originally brought us into the franchise. Halo's first 3 games specifically, I'm not going into ODST and Reach right now, but their games specifically were a massive hit, and it could sort of be compared to the original Star Wars trilogy where it was a huge hit, and when they tried to do, or basically, cash in with the series, decades later, it turned on them. And what's interesting from that perspective is there are still some good things, believe it or not, that came from that. I lost my train of thought there. Like I said, off the cuff, folks. There's still some good things that came from both. For example, when you look at Star Wars, the prequels, one thing that did come from it. Jesus, I really got to stop doing this off the cuff. One really positive thing that came from it, at least in my opinion, was the Clone Wars series. That's a little cartoon series that takes place between episodes 2 and 3. You can find it on Netflix now. And of course, we also have Star Wars Rebels. I haven't seen most of those. I've seen a few of them. It's based off of very similar animation styles as Clone Wars, but it takes place right before A New Hope. So it is kind of cool to see that. So there was a silver lining to that. In terms of Halo, we've seen some silver linings too. We've seen some really cool mobile games come out. Again, I personally enjoyed Spartan Assault. And we've seen an overall expansion of the universe. These three one of the main things that all three of these universes, I don't want to say genres because, sci-fi is a genre. All three of these titles have in common is that they've transcended books, films, and video games. All of them have. And toys, of course. And so it's interesting to see how they survive on the different mediums. Star Wars seems to do well in all of them. Films, obviously, are the big ones there. Video games, obviously, Battlefront's still very popular. And, of course, there are tons and tons of books out there that further expand on the universe. Here's where Star Wars did it right. The books are out there to expand the universe for people who are diehard fans and want to know more about the lore behind Star Wars. Halo started out that way, but it didn't end up that way, or at least not at this point in time. The games should be independent from the books. You shouldn't ever have to rely on books to support the games in general, or a movie for that matter. But it shouldn't be a thing. But now you can't play the games without reading, whatever number of books are out there so that you're fully caught up. And graphics novels and films and all that stuff, they're not independent of each other, and they need to be. It's not that they can't be connected at all, but it shouldn't be to a point where you can't enjoy the main portion of the series. In this case, it's the games, whereas Star Wars, it would be the movies, without reading all the outside material, because then people can't feel as engaged in it, they feel lost, and they're not nearly as entertained. And I'm in that category. As big as a Halo fan that I am, that's one of the major drawbacks to me for Halo 5, is there's so much outside content that you need for it to be clear to you what's going on, and they give you no answers. So you feel like you've missed a couple of games or something like that. And even Halo Wars 2, even though it was better, still had that problem. Basically, in Halo Wars 2, we'd already had Hunters After Dark, that piece of fiction right there. Again, great story, but for those who haven't read it, are going to be confused when they start out Halo Wars 2. Star Wars didn't really seem to have that problem. Even if you go back to the prequels, you could watch the 3 movies and understand it. You didn't have to go through outside material. It helped if you had seen the original trilogy first. I'm sure most people who saw the prequels did see the original trilogy, but you didn't have to. It was its own self-contained thing. Star Trek is, it has a larger mythology behind it, because keep in mind, Star Trek is a TV show in addition to the movies, and so that there's a show that you need to follow from week to week. At the same time, though, you can watch one of the Star Trek movies and not have an issue with it. You don't really have to worry about all the other things that have happened in the universe. It's about that particular conflict in that particular movie. Wrath of Khan, excellent Star Trek movie. I thought that one was great. The other one that I thought was really good before J.J. Abrams took over was First Contact. I know, a lot of people thought that one was boring. Personally, I really enjoyed it. And I'm not that big of a Star Trek fan. And then J.J. Abrams took over, and you can watch his movies without having to know anything about Star Trek. And the same goes for Star Wars. Now, granted, the new trilogy does sort of rely a lot on the mythology from previous movies, but at least it doesn't go too much into the outside lore, because remember, for Star Wars in particular, there is a lot of it. But you don't have to know it to enjoy it.
Round 3.
We've all seen these franchises have their slumps, and it does beg the question, but we've also seen their comebacks. And so it begs the question is Halo just going through a slump right now, or will there be a comeback? Remember, Halo is 16 years old now. It's an old franchise for a video game that's, video games, unless you're like Mario or something like that, you don't last forever. I'm surprised Resident Evil has lasted as long as it has. But franchises die out. Halo being at the top of its food chain for so long, and then finally having major competitors like Call of Duty or Battlefield, it's interesting to see that they're still trying to carry the torch to it. And one of the reasons I feel like Bungie wanted to stop making Halo games is so that it never got to the point where we, as gamers, felt tired of Halo. And it seems like it's getting to that point. Part of me honestly believes that Halo is past its prime, that it can never make a comeback like Star Wars and Star Trek, that they've derailed from the main material so much and created so much outside material. They wanted to make it bigger than it could be, and it just crumbled. When 343 Industries first acquired Halo, remember, they had so many plans for it. It wasn't just going to be a Reclaimer trilogy, it was going to be a saga. And to a fair point, it has been. Because there have been 4 separate games that have been made strictly in that universe. We've had Halo 4, Halo Spartan Assault, Halo Spartan Strike, and Halo 5 Guardians. Now you may think, oh, well, when they implied Saga, they meant the first-person shooter games. They never said that. They just said games. When people heard that they wanted to create a new Halo game once a year, they thought that meant first-person games, and they were like, oh no, the quality's going to go to hell if they do that. No, they were doing that for a while, where they created new games every year, but they were not the first-person variety. They created different types of games to keep people entertained for it. And I think between that and expanding upon the universe in general, and you have to know all these things just to get the main games, which should be their main focus, because that's what made Halo Halo. Because they're working on expanding it so much, it's all crumbled from beneath them. They don't have that foundation there that Bungie did. There was once a time where they said that there was going to be a Halo TV show, yet still waiting for that one. It was supposed to be produced by Steven Spielberg. We have never seen a trailer for it. This was announced back in 2012. And it's now 5 years later. No Halo TV show that we've seen. They keep saying it's still in talks. Yeah, we heard about that when it came to the first Halo movie that was supposed to be directed by Peter Jackson. That didn't happen either. And there's a huge part of me that thinks that 343 also sees the direction that their own franchise is going at this point, and maybe they're starting to see it too. Maybe after the next major Halo installment, Halo 6, they'll finally get out of it before they actually ruin the name of Halo. There's still other stuff they can do. There's other types of games they can produce. There's other types of things they can do for the franchise, but now they're overdoing it. And there was a time when I wondered if maybe Star Wars and Star Trek had the same problems. The thing of it is, they don't, because most of them are structured pretty well. I mean, say what you will about Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones and whatever the third movie was called. I don't even remember now. Whatever Episode 3 was called. Revenge of the Sith. Thank you. Even though those stories weren't as exciting, they were boring. Some of them kind of ruined Star Wars by bringing midichlorians into the whole thing. There are several reasons you can point out why the prequels were terrible, but at the same time, they were still easy to follow. These were made for children, and they're supposed to be easy to follow, even if it got boring sometimes. Halo just seems that it can't take what built its success originally and further expand on that. They're trying to expand it too big, too fast, instead of just letting fans gather around it naturally. They had a system that worked. Release a game once every 3 years or so. Release a couple of books in the process. don't necessarily call the books canon, but you can have small little references in there if you want to. But it's not necessary for you to know the series. People who watch Star Wars generally aren't lost. People who watch Star Trek generally aren't lost. People who play Halo are lost, especially now. When you compare franchises like Star Wars and Star Trek to franchises like Halo, it's not easy to do because, again, when you think of Star Trek, you think of the TV series. When you think of Star Wars, you think of the movies. And when you think of Halo, you think of video games. They don't all attract the same audiences, but both were cultural icons for their time.
Complete.
And as far as I can tell, all three of them still are. The difference is they can go back and make Star Wars feel new and refreshing while still being an homage to what was the original trilogy. Star Trek can do the same thing. Even though this is they're more in the reboot stage now, they can still make it exciting, not only for people who were fans of Star Trek back in the day when it first premiered, but they can also bring new generations into it.
Incoming covenant detected.
Halo isn't really doing that. Halo is trying so hard to be bigger than it is.
In the area.
And because of that, because I believe there was a time when Microsoft thought that Halo was their juggernaut and they can mess with it any way they wanted to and it would be fine. But it's not working out that way. And they're still pushing it. Now the question is, are we going to see a similar pattern to Halo that we've seen with Star Wars and Star Trek? Are we going to see comebacks for a new generation that while still pays respects to the old generation? The next major Halo title is set to release in 2018. More than likely we'll be seeing a trailer for it at E3 2017 this year.
9 Rex available.
And all I can say to you is time will tell. All three of these series are great. All are fantastic space operas. And all have fans in their own right. The cool thing about it is you can be a fan of one and hate the other two because all three are vastly different from each other. They only have a few similarities, but you can use those similarities to help better another series. And in this case, that series is Halo. I hope you guys enjoyed the new Star Wars Episode 8 The Last Jedi trailer. If you haven't seen it yet, I'll post a link in the description below for you to check it out. Let me know in the comments below what of those three, between Star Wars, Star Trek, and Halo, are your favorites. In the future, I'll do a video that actually literally compares the franchises themselves. It's not going to be easy to do because, as I said before, Star Trek is to TV, as Star Wars is to movies, and Halo is to video games, even though they've all crossed over on each other's mediums. Except for Halo, in that sense, they've only done movies. But let me know what your favorite one is in the comments below. Do you think there's hope for a comeback for Halo? Or do you think it's finally falling to the wayside and it's time to move on to something else? You can leave a comment for me in the comment section, or you can hit me up on both Facebook and Twitter. Links to my social media can be found in the description. And if you like this video, please share it with your friends. And if you hated it, send it to them anyway because it'll remind them to watch the new Star Wars trailer. But if you like these videos, please hit that subscribe button for more video game related content every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday right here on MythicTyrant.com. I will be back from vacation next week and we'll pick up from there. Thanks so much for watching, guys and gals. Again, don't forget about Q&A Saturdays and Sunday Fun Days. I'll see you all right back here next time. Thank you for listening to my off-the-cut rant. And as always, I'm the Tyrant, signing off.